So back in 2019, when India won its first ever Border Gavaskar Trophy in Australia and then went on to win a number of home series, Virat Kohli made a statement that it was Saurav Ganguly who taught us to win. That statement was lauded, applauded. Ganguly fans were very, very happy. There was one man who wasn't happy. He said, India had won overseas for a long time. In the 70s, in the 80s, maybe Kohli wasn't born then. It was viewed as a salty statement. But when we scratch the surface, it is absolutely true. Who was the man who was not happy with Kohli's statement? It was none other than Sunil Manohar Gavaskar. Why Sunil Manohar Gavaskar said that? Because he was a part of it. In fact, he was not just a part of it, he was the centerpiece of so many of India's overseas wins, glorious ones in 1970s and 1980s. The cricketing discourse around the globe has forgotten, especially in India, has forgotten the contributions of the greats when it comes to the younger generation, trolling them, abusing them for their views. We'll today have a look at one such great innings and one such great performance by one of India's talismans through the 70s and 80s, that was Sunil Gavaskar. Let's go back to the time when he made his debut. It was 1971. India was coming off the back of a home series loss to Australia in late 1969 and 70. West Indies was a team in transition, and in the 49-year history of Indian cricket, India had never defeated West Indies in a single test match. So, one of the toughest propositions for any traveling team with the reserves that they had was to be a five-test series in West Indies. They were led by the evergreen Sir Garfield Sobers, very much a great across all specialities, across all disciplines, a wonderful fielder, a superb bowler, and of course, the greatest batsman. India's Tiger Pataudi was not available, and what they were looking for was someone to captain the team and some opener. So they went into Mumbai's pool of ever fertile cricketers and went for Ajit Wadekar to start the proceedings as a captain. And they looked at the highly rated Sunil Gavaskar. He was very well known in Mumbai cricket circles for his insatiable appetite for runs, and he continued to impress everyone with his domestic performance. So, at a ripe age of 21, one would say, he was selected in the Indian team for, as we know, what would be the toughest assignment ever. Now, what were India's memories of West Indies till then? Great batsmen with flair, likes of Sobers, Kanhai, George Headley before them, the three Ws, all of them who had done very, very well against India. The dangerous fast bowlers, the likes of Wesley Hall, Roy Gilchrist, the famous Nari contractor incident where his skull was almost blown off by a great snorter back then in the West Indies and he could never play cricket again. So the memories were terrifying. It would have taken a brave man to actually bet and bat for India in those times because the history was not very good. India had just won an overseas series till now once, that was in 1967 against New Zealand. And we were quite the unfancied team going there. And the impression going around was that Indians were good at spin, but overall chicken hearted batsmen and not very good at fast bowling, which the wickets back in the West Indies used to support. So we fast forward to the first test. There are a lot of practice matches going on. In his autobiography, Sunil Gavaskar also mentions about how the rabid Barbados crowd used to boo them even in domestic matches, and there was this cry for blood from the players, and it was dangerous for the traveling team. Now, due to certain issues, Sunil Gavaskar could not play the first test. India found itself in a lot of trouble, 70 odd for 5. And then Dilip Sardesai, again, a man very well known for his batting in the Mumbai circles, had not done great justice to his potential, and he was appearing a ripe enough age to retire. Before the tour, he said that I would want to retire with 3 centuries in the West Indies. He went on his business, scored a double hundred, right? So from 70 for 5, scoring a double hundred, one day was rained off, and Indian spinners were all over the West Indies with the help of Eknath Solkar. And India had asked West Indies to follow on in the first test. There was obviously not enough time for us to win the test match, but the fact that we asked the West Indies to follow on after being 70 for 5 really killed the mood for the West Indies, and everybody knew that the challenge was there. Second test, we go back, and that is one of the most famous test matches in the history of Indian cricket. It is the Trinidad Test of 1971, a deeply entrenched test match for all the Indian fans, as it should be. India gave test debut to Sunil Gavaskar, his first test. As it turned out, India played brilliantly right through the match. Indian spinners had a stranglehold. Prasanna, Venkat, and Bishan Singh Bedi and a great performance from all the seniors and the juniors led India to its first ever test victory over the West Indies, not just in West Indies, but over the West Indies. It was for the first time, obviously, that India had taken a series lead and the West Indies would really come back strong. Sunil Gavaskar scored 65 and 67 not out in a chase of 124 in the fourth innings, and India managed to have a convincing win and a 1-0 series lead going into the rest of the series. What happened next is, well, it's the stuff of dreams. The next test at Barbados was when Sunil Gavaskar got his first test century in his only second test. Again, the bowling attack by today's standards is not considered very great. The likes of Jack Norika, Garry Sobers, Utundo, Charlie Davis, all those people were not what you would think would be terrifying the world. But let's not forget, we are looking at a team that had never won anything against the West Indies, against a team that still had wonderful batsmen, the likes of Lloyd, Kanhai, Sobers, and there were a lot of great people coming in. Andy Roberts was coming in through the sidelines too. So this achievement cannot be discounted considering the fact that both teams were at where they were and the history of India when it came to West Indies. And the third test was drawn, so was the fourth test. India narrowly managing to, just salvage their days. But not just that, they were quite good in managing that. And Dilip Sardesai, as he delivered on his promise, scored 300s, including that one double hundred at Jamaica. Now, the final test. This is the centerpiece of our story. The background tells us how difficult it was for all the teams, especially for the Indian teams. Now, the fifth test and the West Indies were baying for blood. Sunil Gavaskar had already got his second test 100 by then, so he was already being looked at as some wonderful upcoming star that would be said, because three test matches, 200s, and close to 300 runs being scored. Come the sixth, the final test, India were put into bat first on a seemingly fast deck. Guess who rose to the occasion? The would-be great Sunil Gavaskar again. In the first innings, he started playing the West Indian bowlers with flair, commitment, passion, but most importantly, technique. I think these things help, but technique and temperaments are the two most important things that lead a batsman to greater heights. He started scoring, he kept losing partners regularly. 30s and 40s were scored all around him. And eventually he got again to his third test 100, probably which he rated as the best of his lot out of the three, because the West Indians were really, really going for it. Sobers was bowling all kinds of left arm spin, left arm seam, left arm everything. And eventually Gavaskar got to his 100, celebrated brilliantly. India scored what looked like a decent enough 360. Remember, we were one up in the series. All we needed was a draw, but the West Indies were hell-bent on not allowing us that. So they came out absolutely blazing. They just smashed the smithereens out of us. Garry Sobers smashed 100. Charlie Davis scored 100. Everyone was going at it very, very fast, and they were just having none of our bowling. So Erapalli Prasanna, Venkat, and Bishan Singh Bedi, and they were treated with respect when needed, but the others were treated fairly harshly, and West Indies ended up scoring 527. That's a massive first innings lead. Sunny had developed a toothache because of the infection. Anyone who has gone through toothaches knows that it's one of the worst pains of your life. He wanted to get his tooth extracted in the middle of the test match, but the manager had told him very clearly that he could not, because he would feel sedated, and there was a chance that India might need him for salvaging the test again. Now imagine such pressure being put in on a 21-year-old who's playing only his fourth test match, right? So Sunny would not be very fond of recalling that incident, but he played through the pain. He started, wincing, took some painkillers, and he just went through the motions of the first 3 days of the test match. As it turned out, we had to bat for nearly 2 days if we wanted to save the test and by extension win the series. A great moment awaited. The pressure was intense. The lead was fairly significant. The wicket was deteriorating as it does in the latter part of the summers. West Indies were looking for the kill. The crowd was really onto it, and it started. So slowly, the pain began rising in Gavaskar's neck and face region, and with that pain started rising the level of his batting. He came out to bat. He was in a monk-like state, started finding gaps. The usual straight drives, the cover drives, the flicks all started coming in gently, just prodding along, pushing along, ably supported again by a lot of people who got 60s, 70s alongside. And when there was 1.5 day remaining, he slowly managed to get to around 70 not out. The match was still very much in the balance. India were just about closing in on the lead. So it was obvious that we would not go down without a fight. But having struggled so hard to maintain that series lead, it was imperative that somebody took the charge and started scoring some runs. It was at that time that Sunil Gavaskar decided that enough is enough, we'll need to score some runs. And then he started going about his business again, starting to pull with authority. He even smoked a six in to one of the West Indian fast bowlers, hooking the ball, and that is something that the crowd absolutely loved. Got to his 100, which was a twin now. Imagine a 21-year-old in the West Indies batting without a helmet, getting a twin in his only the fourth test match, which was his fourth test century too. Now, it's incredible, unheard of kind of a debut. It was supposed to be a baptism by fire. As it turned out, it was just a silken, smooth approach to Test cricket, and he took to Test cricket like a fish to water and more. As he got there, it was so Garry Sobers who started clapping and jumping, and he was very happy for him because Sobers knew that the greatness that he seemed to be leaving behind was now going to be picked up by someone else, and the next big thing in the world cricket was here. But when Gavaskar got to his 100, India's lead was only about 40 runs. So everybody told him to not relax, and he continued prodding on and on. The tooth pain got to him. He took some painkillers, resumed his innings, continued batting, lost a lot of sweat. It was a stern test of his technique, his patience, overall approach to life, and he came out trumps. Late on the last day, when there were about two sessions remaining, he got to his double 100. A third innings double 100 when the team was trailing by more than 175 runs, when the series was on the line, and all this as a twin in only his fourth test. I keep coming back to this point, but it is very, very important to note that this was the level of batting that Sunny had showed right in his first test series. All caveats considered, this is probably the best batting one had seen in the West Indies for a long, long time by a visiting batsman. Sunny Gavaskar got out for 220, having put India in a very, very secure position. India got to 430, setting West Indies a target of close to 250 runs with not more than two sessions left. So it was almost certain that India had salvaged the day and the series. But this put West Indies under immense pressure. They knew they had to go for it, even though it was an unrealistic chance of getting there. But since they had to go for it, they started committing mistakes, and they were 8 down with 3 overs to go. And Venkat Bishan and Erapalli Prasanna were all over the West Indies. Abid Ali bowled beautifully then. And eventually, West Indies just managed a pale, meager, tame draw when they were 8 down. So 165 for 8 was the point where it all ended. Wild celebrations were sparked. Sunny was extremely happy and relieved, not because he has scored a twin, it was because he could finally get his tooth extracted right then and there. He went back there, got his tooth removed, and was in a state of blissful unawareness as to what he had done. What India had done? India had won its first ever test series in West Indies under a new captain, Ajit Wadekar, with a new bunch of people, largely dominated by spinners. Abid Ali and Eknath Solkar were the opening bowlers. Now, that's the state of affairs you would imagine. For those who don't know, Abid Ali was at best, a Hardik Pandya type of a bowler. He always used to bowl a first over. All due respect, was a lovely gentleman and an honest trier, but that's what he was. And Eknath Solkar was a Saurav Ganguly level bowler. He was very good, again, honest trier, and one of the greatest fielders that we have produced. But well, let's say that he was definitely not a new ball bowler. So it was all down to the spinners in a land that had produced great batsmen all through, and also had some great batsmen in a great form also. But this was a series that was dominated by two people with the bat. Sunil Gavaskar with 774 runs in the first four tests of his career. Put it in the context of what happens these days. This was a guy in the first series scoring 774 runs, followed by Dilip Sardesai, who scored 642 runs with his promised 300s. And all this led to India's first ever test series win. It was a wonderful effort, and the people around there whose interviews have come out have shown how important it was for the team to win there, and the kind of elation that everyone had felt. There are so many stories around that are heartwarming. The Sunil Gavaskar toothache stories, of course, there. And then there was the story of Bishan Singh Bedi. Always someone after our hearts. He was so impressed by Sunil Gavaskar's batting in that test that his son, who had been born back in India, during that test match at Trinidad. Bishan named his son as Gavasinder Singh. It was, of course, after Sunil Gavaskar and Inder Singh. That's the tribute that such a great legend of the game paid to an upcoming star of Indian cricket by calling his own son Gavasinder Singh. India would go on to achieve great heights in that summer of 1971. Probably we'll talk about it in another episode as to what happened next. But this was a series that marked the debut of one of India's finest ever. He may not have Sachin's runs, he may not have Sachin's hundreds. Dravid has gone past him. There are suggestions of other people who are as good or better than him. But considering the circumstances that he has played in, when India genuinely had no openers to talk of at that time, no protective gears, no rules restrictions where the number of bouncers to be bowled on any batsman was absolutely unlimited. In a foreign land, playing his first series like this and serving India for the next 16 years with great distinction, I genuinely think he remains India's first samurai. He was the one who laid the foundation for the all-time greats to follow, but he's the first of them. Let's not deny him that. This is about Sunil Gavaskar, the man, the myth, the legend, and how his twin turns, including a third inning double hundred that followed a first innings hundred, helped India achieve its first ever series win in the Caribbean. India would not win a test series in the Caribbean for the next 35 years. That's how tough it was. With Garry Sobers and everybody else in such appreciation, Lord Relator created a song for Sunil Gavaskar, the Calypso, where they just claimed that we couldn't out Gavaskar at all. 774 runs, 4 test matches. Sunil Gavaskar the Great was born.
Venkataraghavan, Bedi in a turban, Vijay Jaishima, Jayantilal. They helped to win the series against the West Indies at Sabina Park and Queen's Park Oval. 158 by Kanai, really sent our hopes up high. Noriega 9 for 95, the Indian team they still survive. It was Gavaskar, the real master, just like a wall. We couldn't out Gavaskar at all, not at all. You know the West Indies couldn't out Gavaskar at all.